So thank you, Fnatic, for sending me the Thorn to review. I've been trying for months to get hold of one of these in the UK, and you guys saved me. Thank you very much. So the Thorn is a very capable mouse if you are looking at the spec sheet. It has a 3395 sensor, and the Fnatic version is capable of 4K polling rate. It weighs 52 grams, has optical switches, has 80 hours worth of battery life at 1K polling rate, and overall, it's the full package. So the mouse 1 and 2 clicks on the Thorn feel surprisingly good for an optical switch implementation. A bugbear I have with optical switches on other mice is that they don't feel too tactile or offer much feedback in use, but the Thorn's mouse 1 and 2 clicks are the best optical implementation I've experienced so far, followed closely by the Pulsar X-Lite V3 ES, but they feel a hair heavier than the X-Lite V3 by comparison, so just bear that in mind. The side buttons are also really nicely defined on the side of the mouse. They stick out a nice way from the shell. They're good to press. There's not too much pre or post travel on my unit. I certainly have no complaints here. So the scroll wheel feels slightly less defined than the Vaxee wheels and maybe slightly lighter to actuate. The click on scroll wheel function too. Maybe a smoother overall experience on the scroll wheel. I really like it. It's a great scroll wheel implementation. Again, no complaints here. And basically all of the buttons on this mouse are pretty nice. The only thing I would change about this mouse is button implementation. If I could, would be the clicks. I mean, they're the best optical implementation that I've experienced so far, but I do prefer mechanical switches personally. So if you're enjoying this video, consider liking the video and subscribing. It helps me out a bunch. Let's get back into it. The Thorn is quite a small mouse if you look at the dimensions, but it doesn't feel too small to me in my hand, and it feels like a medium-ish size mouse. I think that's because the hump is quite tall considering the rest of the dimensions. The coating on the Thorn is pretty good too. I'd say it's not as good as the Vaxee or the Zowie coating, but it's certainly nice and chalky and it feels good in my hand. I don't have to use grip tape on mine, which is really nice. Grip tape is included in the box too, so if it was a problem, they provided the solution to that for you. I think the unboxing experience of Lamzu mice gets hammed up a bit. I don't really care about the so-called Lamzu ritual or spectacle of unboxing a Lamzu mouse, because as soon as I've grabbed the mouse and the dongle out of the box, the rest of it just gets flung into a cupboard. But Lamzu could honestly deliver this mouse to me in a sandwich bag and I'd be happy. What I like about it though is that the contents of the box are very comprehensive, and I appreciate the extra accessories they provide inside. It prevents future purchases for things like mouse feet and grip tapes, which is probably a good £20 saved. I really want to dive into the shape of this mouse now, because that's where I think it gets interesting. So I actually think this mouse might be the safest ergo shape you can buy. It's not over the top with its ergo elements, and therefore it's probably a good way to introduce yourself to the ergo mouse market if you haven't tried one before. It almost feels like an ergo light, or a hybrid between a normal asymmetrical mouse and a normal ergo mouse. Somewhere in between is where the Thorn kind of sits. Most ergo mice have really deep thumb grooves. They'll also have a part of the back of the mouse for you to plant the base of your palm onto, and they'll typically sweep out the right-hand side and have a slanted hump profile, which means the mouse is taller on one side than it is on the other. And the Thorn kind of does those things too, but they're a bit muted or toned down when compared to the AX or the EC series. One thing I noticed with the Thorn is that the thumb section doesn't press as far into my palm as it does on the AX or the EC series. On the Thorn, I can see daylight between the mouse and my thumb knuckle, and on the AX and the EC, I can't see daylight in the same place. And that feels really obvious in my hand. It almost feels like there's a flat plateau where the mouse reaches its peak of the curve. As it rounds off near the thumb, it kind of just stops and redirects itself around the back of the mouse. This all means you don't get too much contact with the back knuckle of your thumb, so instead of getting stability from the knuckle, you get it from the thumb itself, which is quite unique to the Thorn. The hump on the Thorn sits in the middle of the mouse, and it's also quite high when considering the other dimensions. It's also a very orderly hump that kind of follows a direction and doesn't deviate from it. It kind of looks like a dog tucking its tail between its legs. The AX and the EC, by comparison, have a lot more space on the back end for you to plant your palm onto, And I feel like that's quite a distinct feature for ergo mice that the Thorn doesn't necessarily have. So the AX and the EC mice make a lot of contact with the fleshy parts of my thumb and my pinky, and the Thorn kind of sits inside my palm but doesn't press out of it into the flesh of my pinky or my thumb. So where I praised the AX in my recent video for having a nice little lip on the button bumper, the EC has that too. So there's a nice little bump here on the EC which feels a little bit sharp by comparison to the Thorn. So the Thorn has this little feature too, but it's really smooth. It's a little bit sharper on the other mice, and it's not as defined on the Thorn. You still get some really good grip from it, but it's not quite as defined as it is on the other two mice. So what does all of that mean for the Thorn, and how does it feel to use? And I'd say the hump profile being less elongated out the back and flatter overall makes it less viable as a palm grip option. And maybe it's possible for you with small hands, but for me, it just kind of sits there with a big air pocket between it and my palm. It's for this reason I think the Thorn has been praised as the best ergo mouse for claw grip by other reviewers, and I'd agree that it feels great in claw grip. It's certainly a better claw mouse than it is a palm mouse, and an important feature of a claw mouse is for it to be quite dynamic in your hand and grip, and the Thorn certainly feels that way with its reduced emphasis on the back end of the hump. It's really easy to make adjustments in aim because it's not always pressing into your palm. An underrated feature of asymmetrical and ergo mice is that the ring and pinky shelf on these mice make it more comfortable to aggressive claw, in my opinion, because I don't have to contort my fingers in weird positions to get good purchase on the mouse. Basically, on an ergo, my fingers have less distance to travel to get that good anchor point on the side of the mouse. I actually grip this mouse the same as I do on every other mouse, and that's a kind of hybrid relaxed claw and palm grip. It feels epic to me, and the Thorn goes almost completely unnoticed in my grip during playtime because the top of the hump gives me great stability across my knuckles. The thumb feels like it's quite deep into the side of the mouse, guiding it onto the target. Now, the other thing that goes into that unnoticed feeling is the weight of the mouse being so low. It's much lighter than the AX and the EC. I think many players these days value that lighter weight. This is a big factor of it feeling so nice and seamless in my hand. The hump profile also means, you could fingertip the Thorn if you wanted to, but it's not my first choice for fingertip options. Extended fingertip may be a little bit better for you than a normal fingertip grip. To circle back round to grips then, I think if you relax claw or aggressive claw, or if you grip like me with that weird sort of hybrid relaxed claw and palm approach, the Thorn is a really solid option, and I'm so happy I finally got a chance to play with it now. If you have large hands and want a mouse to palm grip, I'd probably steer away from the Thorn, but this little thing's been great fun for me to play with, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to review it. In terms of value for money, this is probably the best value for money ergo on the market because you get that A-list spec sheet for £95 in the UK. And I think it would be pretty hard to argue with that statement. If I had to choose my top 3 ergos right now, I'd say the EC1, CW and AX were in my number 1 spot. I can't decide between these at the moment. And the Thorn would be my 3rd mouse, taking the 2nd place spot. That's a huge compliment to the Thorn, coming up against some really stiff competition in my collection. All right, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this one. Chat soon. Bye-bye.